So I hate to ask this as the first question, but are you guys really totally trying to keep you guys not talking about the NCAA tournament?
Yeah, I mean, we never talk about the NCAA tournament. We talk about the next game, and be excited. That's not just coach speak. We talked about it at the beginning of the year when, what were our goals to be good enough to be in that mix at the end of the year. And I don't think there's anything that's changed that. What we do talk about is the more attention they're getting, the more, and all of it is good, and we want to enjoy it. It can't distract us from our preparation, and it can't make us lose our focus of what's made us good. And I've been really proud of those guys for that, because a lot of this is new to a lot of them. For me, I'm not playing, but obviously I was at a place that there was a lot of attention all the time. So, I mean, I'm used to those pressures and what that for these guys, all this is new. So for them to be able to stay focused and eliminate a lot of outside chatter and just be with each other and be excited and having fun along the way is something that I've worried about, because you don't know how they're going to handle it, but they've been great, and they've been excited about continuing to play well and do our best in each and every game.
Going back, what's the flip side to that, where Brian's always talking about there's going to be two stories for Northwestern falls apart, or Northwestern does something special.
Yeah.
That they lock in even harder to make sure they don't screw up.
Yeah, and I don't really want them to think about not screwing up. That's a key thing. The moment you are thinking about, man, I got to protect something, or I got to, that's when it starts going poorly.
But maybe even studying harder.
I just think these guys are really invested. I mean, it's been all year. I mean, it started with the way last year ended. We had a really tough loss in the Big Ten tournament. We played well. We came up short. And, I thought the taste in all of our mouths about the way last year ended funneled into the off season. And I just noticed with these guys all summer and fall, it was just kind of a different mentality. There was, there was a determination, there was a hunger. You had a guy like Vic coming off injury, so selfishly he's super hungry, and they've been like that all year long. And then what happens is you go out and you have some success and you win, you build confidence. And so I think they're a confident group. They really have embraced the fact that they know that they need each other. We are not a one-man band. And it kind of shows game to game. You see a guy like Pardon gets 19 and 22, and then the next night he doesn't have a field goal, and McIntosh has 21. And we find a way to put it together and play great team defense, and that's been the formula for our success.
Talk about the importance of how last year ended. Have you at all looked back to 2 years ago, that losing streak, or even maybe back a year further than that, and just how that is, if that's contributed to this at all?
Yeah, no, it always, I think probably not year one, because, that a lot of the guys on this team, it started 2 years ago, right. When the core of this team started playing together, and there's no question. We had that 10-game stretch where 6 of them were games we probably could have won against great competition, and at Maryland and at Michigan State, where it's one possession and you aren't really able to close the deal. And that's how you learn, by your experiences. And a lot of the guys in our locker room have a lot of sweat equity involved in this. They've had some good highs. They've had their hearts broken a number of times. So, to see them persevere and get tougher through that and rally together, I think is a big reason. That's how you become tough.
What is the one big thing you learned from those experiences that make you what you are now?
Just how bad it hurts when you lose. You don't want to go back there. How much it churns inside of you when you put a lot into it and you don't win. The feeling of losing burns, and you don't want to feel that feeling. So, I think if you can use it the right way to help you, motivate you to play harder and do better, I think that's what drives all of us. And certainly for these guys, they talk about it all the time. They want to be different. They want Northwestern to be a program that's relevant, and they take pride in being the group to kind of make that happen. And it's, I've said it a number of times, and I believe it. They're the ones, that have done it. They're the ones out there. They're the ones that have done the tough things and made the plays. And I'm just kind of along for the ride. It's been great to be their coach, because they've taken great ownership of this team.
Chris, what do you make of Purdue, which some nights they look like they can beat anybody?
Yeah.
Other nights not so good.
Well, I mean, I still think they're an elite team. They're different. I think what makes them in this day and age of kind of the spread basketball and three-point and they're outstanding from three, but they're one of the few teams that really embraces still playing power basketball. And because of that, it's a different team. You don't see that night to night. From night to night, we see a lot of pick and rolls. We see a lot of the similar type things that teams run. With these guys, it's about going into that paint with Swanigan and Haas, and they set the tone for everything. And they've surrounded those guys with outstanding shooting, so it's really tough to pick your poison. Do you want to sell out on those big guys knowing that you're probably going to give up some open shots? And I think they're the best three-point shooting team in our league. So it's why they win a lot of games. They're really well coached. They're great at home. And of course, coming off a game where I think they thought they had a lead the whole game, kind of let it slip away late, they're going to be really motivated. We know we're going to get their best shot tomorrow.
When you go in against somebody different like that, do you try to adjust defensively, or do you try to do what you always do, just hope everybody plays?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think you can't get away from your principles too much, but I think you have to adjust. When you're playing a guy the caliber of Caleb Swanigan, great players make you adjust, and he does that. They bring a guy in like Isaac Haas. No one is like Haas. No one. I always tell people, seeing him on TV with his size does not do it justice when you see him in person. And because of those two guys, they force you to adjust some of your principles, and we'll have to do that. But I think our ideals defensively have to be the same. We have to try to protect our paint, not allow teams to get out and transition against us. Try to do our best to force teams to do things that they don't comfortably do, and our guys have done a pretty good job of that.
You look back at the last 3 or 4 games against Purdue, and you've had foul trouble almost every time. That was when you had the 7-footer and Ola. What's the plan to try to match up with their size and physicality?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to need all our bigs. We're going to need to be smarter, and it's easier said than done, because when you're down there banging a guy that big, you have to try to eliminate the silly fouls, meaning the off-the-ball kind of chicken fighting type of foul, or guys chucking away. Like, you're going to pick up some fouls playing those guys. They're too big. They're too physical. You can't add to it. You can't then get a moving screen on the offensive end or an over-the-back call where, now you pick up a couple legit fouls against them and then 2 cheap ones. Now you got 4. So I think you got to play smart. You still have to play with physicality. We have to give those guys help in certain situations, and do our best. Yeah, I mean, they do that to a lot of people, and that's why they're effective, because those guys put your defense in a lot of holes with the way they can post and draw attention down there.
And in a different vein, Isaiah has had some inefficiencies shooting. How have you tried to work on making him smarter and take fewer risks on offense while still keeping his sort of innate confidence?
Yeah, I mean, it's a fine line. Again, I don't want to rob him of what he does well, and that's be aggressive. And he's had games he's won for us, quite frankly. With the Rutgers game, we don't win if he doesn't get 11 points in the first half. I thought he did a great job in the Nebraska game coming in, especially at the end of the half. I think he scored 7 straight. So, with him, it's about continued film work. Continue to teach him while still being aggressive. When can you pick and choose your spots, when to be aggressive like that. And I feel like he's gotten better. He's still a freshman. He's going to be up and down with it, as most young guys are. But the worst thing in the world I can do is have him play on his heels or play afraid to make a mistake, because then you're robbing him of what he's effective at. That's a good way. You must be a writer. So, yeah, no, it's a good way to put it. Being efficient with your aggressiveness is what we'd like, because we feel like he's a weapon offensively, and he has the ability to break people down and make things happen, and we just want him to pick and choose the right times to do that.
Coach, how have the vets sort of helped the younger guys with expectations and stakes so high? What have they been doing specifically?
Yeah, I mean, I just think the way on a day-to-day basis, I mean, there's a great culture of work in our program right now that comes from the guys. Like, it's a good thing when you're a young player coming into this program, the older guys show the way, sometimes with their words, but a lot through their actions. The way they come in early, they stay late, they get extra shots, they do extra things with the strength and conditioning coach, the way they eat, the nutrition stuff. I mean, the players are the ones leading the example, where I don't have to do that, and that's when you know you got something good going
What
on.
about Sanjay specifically? He's been around for 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, everything Sanjay does by example is a leadership and an example of what I want in this program. I mean, Sanjay brings it every single day. Does it mean he plays great all the time? No. But there's not a day that he doesn't show up and have his best and work hard and battle and lock into what we are doing in preparation. And he doesn't have to say a whole lot. You know, he just does it by his action. There's not a person in that locker room that doesn't respect what he brings.
Does he not say a lot? Why?
Yeah, he's more by example. He's more lead. You know, it hasn't been his personality to be. He's gotten better as he's gotten older. You know, he's spoke up when he needs to, but his biggest attribute is to lead through his example.
Coach, do you think that there's a different type of swag than what your other teams have had throughout the season?
Yeah. I mean, there's a confidence level that we haven't had, and part of that is through winning. You know, when you win and you play against good competition and you have success, you do get more confident. And there's no question that, you know, these guys, and a lot of them are the same guys that weren't as confident in the past. That's what's cool about it, you know, to see the evolution of that and to see them become confident and to see them take the floor knowing that, you know, we can win. And it's been a nice process. Yeah, I think our principles have been good. You know, we're a team defensive team. We have a couple elite. I mean, I think Vic Law is as elite as defender as there is. I mean, I think he should be in the mix at the end of the year. I mean, I'm not quite sure there's a more versatile, better defender in the conference for the kind of guys he guards. But the other guys have just become very smart with our principles. You know, they don't take chances. We're in the right spots a lot. They really lock into game preparation with people's tendencies and their sets. And they've done a good job of taking ownership in it. I mean, a good defense is kind of like a good like when you believe in it, it's better. And that's what I've noticed. They're starting to really believe, not just play the defense, but believe in the defense, and that's what's made it more effective.
Brian's starting to creep up on the assist record for the program, career assist
Yeah.
record. What do you think it says about him that he's got a shot to set it as a junior?
Yeah, I mean, it's great. I mean, he's been a major impact guy since day one, and you know, he's been very consistent. He's gone through his ups and downs like all players have, but you know, from day one, he's established himself as a premier passer. And you know, it's just some of the passes he throws, you know, I don't even see from the sidelines. He's just got an innate feel for when guys should be, where they should be, putting them in the right spots and getting them the ball. And you know, what's happened too, the more talent we've put around him, you know, then your assist numbers go up because you got more guys who can put the ball in the basket. And I think that's what we've seen as well.
Coach, can you speak a little bit about Derek's development from when he got into the program to now and his importance on this team?
Yeah, I mean, Derek is our anchor. You know, he sets the tone. You know, he and Sanjay back there, but specifically Derek, he again, he's becoming more vocal, but he's another guy that there's nobody who works harder in our program. You know, he comes in every day. You've seen his skill set evolve. He offensively, he's become better. He's shooting the ball better. He's unique because he's only about 6'8", but because of his wingspan and because of his strength and because of his innate ability defensively on the boards, he's very effective against bigger guys. And you know, it's something we saw in high school. You know, he played on a state championship team with, you know, a guy who was a top 10 player in his class that got a lot of the attention. And every time we were there, we just continue to be impressed about how he competed, how he worked. And, you know, he's been a kid. I mean, you should have him show you a picture of what he looked like in 8th grade. I mean, he was like 50 pounds heavier. You know, he was out of shape. And he's worked himself to become the player he is, which makes you really proud to see him have this kind of success.
Yeah, he's averaging almost 3 blocks a game. What does that allow you guys to do defensively on the perimeter with him down there?
Yeah, I mean, I think it gives the guys confidence knowing, first of all, you don't create silly fouls if a guy does drive you, because they know there's a good chance he can alter a shot, so you don't reach in. You kind of, you know, shy away from some of those. You can be a little bit more aggressive at times, funneling guys into a shot blocker, which you can get out on three-point shooters a little bit better. So it's a great advantage, especially now with the emphasis being they would like to call less charges. So the best way to protect your basket is by altering shots, and to have an elite shot blocker, makes your defense that much better. So thanks, guys.
All right, appreciate it.